Hi Mendeltje, thank you so much for joining me here today. Just a couple of days after the Dutch elections, Pavilion is a multinational consultancy. We have Dutch roots and also a big office in The Hague. That's also the reason why we're very interested in understanding the outcome of the Dutch elections and why we're very happy to welcome you here today in your capacity as Professor of Practice European Studies. And you are a keen observer of the European landscape and also from a Dutch perspective. You've even written a book about it, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Margreet. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Actually, Dutch EU politics is my background. I wrote a PhD on Dutch European Union politics and now regularly write about that as a commentator. And of course, this is a very important week for Dutch politics and Dutch European Union politics. So it's great to have the opportunity to talk with you about this.
Thank you very much. In this interview, I would like to touch upon a few topics. First of all, the outcome of the Dutch elections. But also, do you foresee any changing role of the Netherlands in the EU? And if we come to speak about European policies in view of climate, do you think that it's going to change? So those are some questions we will certainly address. But then starting with the outcome of the Dutch elections. So what first seemed to be a very close call between the parties turned out to be a landslide for the party of Geert Wilders, the Party for Freedom. So he won 37 out of 150 seats in the Dutch parliament. So the question is, could we anticipate this? How do you look at this result?
Yeah, it's of course really a groundbreaking result. Many commentators are very surprised, and now what we see today in the newspapers and the commentaries is that people are all trying to explain whether we could have, as you ask, foreseen this landslide. What you see is actually a pattern that we see in more elections. Where in the Netherlands we have the custom of having polls published until just before election day. So until we went to the polls we went to the ballot box on Wednesday, and on Tuesday we still had polls published. Yeah. And then we saw already what had been emerging as a trend in the past week, the increase of voters voicing their preference for the Party for Freedom, so the Geert Wilders party. What we see in elections very often is that this trend in the polls, you see an extra boost, so to say, when the real outcome is clear. We saw the same when we had the last elections in 2021 with D66, so the Social Liberal Party, which was, I think, polled at 19 seats just before election day, and then they came out at 24. And now for Wilders we see the same effect of this last boost, so to say. But well, of course, when we were all looking at the first results at 9 o'clock on Wednesday evening, I mean, the whole country was shocked. Even, I presume, Geert Wilders himself was shocked about the immense result of 37 seats.
In your opinion, how would you explain the huge victory of his party?
Well, what we see is that he has been given a platform in the past weeks in the election shows. We've had many television broadcasted debates between the different party leaders. And you see that Geert Wilders is really very good at that. He's a very experienced member of parliament. He's actually now the longest serving member of parliament in the Dutch national parliament, the House of Representatives. Yep. He's just taken over that position. And you see here actually decades of experience in political debates. He is smart, he's witty, he's responding very quickly to certain, I would say, changes in the debate. And you can't fool him with that. On top of that, he has a lot of knowledge about the position of his adversaries. He perfectly knew how to, I would say, also address the weak points of, for instance, one of his big adversaries, which was Frans Timmermans.
Yeah.
Many of the listeners will know him as a former European Commissioner of the Netherlands, who came from Brussels to The Hague for this election to act as a spitzenkandidaat of the Labour Party. And I must say that Geert Wilders has done a great job in taking all the, I would say, contradictions as well in Frans Timmermans' position, being actually a bit older than the rest of the Spitzenkandidaten, being actually of course, a white, older man, coming from Brussels. People were, a bit hesitant whether he could really run, whether he would really represent the Labour Party, which has merged with the Greens, by the way. Geert Wilders is excellent in exactly picking out those points in debates. But we hadn't expected that so much of the electorate would go for his actual points of view, which are very contested already for many years in the Netherlands.
Yeah. So you feel that his win really became apparent during the elections, during the debates prior to the elections, not so much during the previous term, but there should be something in what he said that resonated with
Absolutely.
the voters.
Yeah, I think that during the previous term that we've seen in Parliament, Geert Wilders has always been very vocal, but he has a party, although I think it had around 20 seats, which wasn't very outspoken only on migration and healthcare. Many people wouldn't probably know many of the MPs of the Party for Freedom, which had been in Parliament quite long. I must say that the Speaker of the Parliament, one of the Vice Speakers, Deputy Speakers, Martin Bosma, was also quite known. But we had not foreseen, as followers, I think, of the Dutch Parliament, that in terms of content he would dominate the debates, until the moment that he voiced so many of the concerns that many Dutch voters clearly have about the effects of migration policies, or I would say the lacking effect of migration policies in the Dutch political landscape.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And then we touched upon it in the introduction. So last time around, it took almost 300 days to form a coalition. What can we expect? This morning we heard that the VVD is not very willing to form a coalition, but Geert Wilders' party won. So how would you see this playing out?
Yeah, if I would know that, I could now earn probably a lot of money as political commentator, because all commentators are at the moment really guessing what will be the issue, what will be the foreseeable steps in the coming weeks. The first step is that the Party for Freedom is today, actually we're talking on Friday, 2 days after the election, is asked to nominate an explorer, someone who will go and talk to everyone. So first, as it has been described, this will also be some emotional talks to talk to all other parties and see what they see as next steps. So it's a very democratic process. And what we see then is that now certain parties are internally debating what will be their reaction. There have been very quick reactions on election night. We see also that some parties have now internal debates. For instance, Liberal Party, as you were referring to, a part of their voters, of their electorate, see possibilities of now going into a coalition, because just to be sure, we always need coalitions in the Dutch Parliament. We have 150 seats. Geert Wilders has 37. So he needs at least 2 other parties to...
Or a minority could also be possible, with support from, for example, the Liberal Party.
That's something that we hear now. Actually, would be for the first time in the Dutch Parliament in the foreseeable, or actually in the recent past. It is actually something we see in Scandinavian countries, but we don't have that experience. People are also saying maybe excluding the Party for Freedom from the government. Then you it would be possible. There's a 4-party coalition possible.
You see that in Belgium, for example, very often.
We see that,
Yeah.
and then of course the debate is as it is in Belgium about the cordon sanitaire, whether that doesn't even, I would say, flame up the concerns of voters that their preference is not included in the government.
Don't listen to them.
These dilemmas are all very much commented upon at the moment.
So it will not be an easy process for sure.
No, if someone would know, that wouldn't. And all 3 parties that could form a government now are having internal debates. I must say, with the exception of Geert Wilders, because people may not know, but it's not a party. We call it the Party for Freedom, but it's only him being a member. So he has a relatively easy task here.
We know that the Party for Freedom, if we look at the party program, they advocate for an exit from the European Union, an exit. Do you foresee any situation where the party under the leadership of Geert Wilders will try, if he becomes a prime minister, to have this back on the agenda?
The moment he was reflecting in the first reflection on the election results on election night, Geert Wilders said, we have positions, but we also understand that we will have to compromise on certain issues. And it is my belief, but maybe it's also my hope, I must say, that this is one of the issues, as well as, for instance, banning the Quran, banning Muslim schools, which is also in the program, that he will compromise on and say, okay, we're very critical about European integration, and we will certainly work on migration issues, but when it really comes to exiting, this will be something that he won't get any other parties on the majority on. No, I agree.
So it's not very likely.
No.
And then I think it's also good to bridge to the second theme of this interview, which is really the changing role of the Netherlands in the EU. So we all seen the headlines in the international press, disbelief about the outcome of the elections. And we also know that the Netherlands are seen as very constructive, proactive, agenda-setting deal makers in the EU under the leadership of Margreet's Liberal Party. That may change in case we would have a right-wing government led by Geert Wilders. In a hypothetical scenario where indeed Geert Wilders would be the prime minister, how do you think this would change the position of the Netherlands in the EU and the impact it also may have on the elections held in other countries later this year?
Well, to answer that question, I think we have to distinguish between high politics, so to say, and low politics. And with the latter, I mean the normal working group, Coreper, Council of Ministers discussions that go on a daily basis in the European Union.
Yeah.
When it comes to those discussions, it's mostly civil servants and experts from the member state discussing very concrete legislation and programs. And what we see there, that of course they are under instruction from the national capital, but they're always trying to find a consensus. As you said, the Dutch are very good and experienced in that process. We are, after all, a founding member of the European Union. We had indeed, and we certainly saw that in the last government of the 4 that Margreet led, we saw a very proactive European stance, which was basically also influenced by the Social Liberal Party D66, which was arguing very, very pro-European stance and an active position. Mark Rutte being the Nestor as well in the European Council. Yes, we're good at that. And I believe that we'll continue to be good at that in seeking compromises, in finding coalitions, majority voting, etc. The thing is that, of course, in high politics, when it comes to the European Council, for instance, the first one coming up mid-December, it will be very difficult to have an instruction from this moment, a very Eurocritical parliament. We have a very active system of national EU scrutiny, meaning that the national parliament gives a instruction and is very involved in debates on the European Union. And certainly this will affect the position of the Netherlands in the European Council, in the councils of ministers in the coming month. even though formally, of course, we are still in a coalition formation situation. So it's the caretaking government that is now still acting at the European stage. As you are referring to the general political landscape, we see this situation, I would say, more right-wing governments, more Euro-critical positions. We see it in many member states. Smaller center. We see the many member states. We also see, I must say, that if politicians come to the European stage, national politicians come to the European stage, we see that they're also affected by this consensus machinery that is Brussels. And we see it in, for instance, the person of Giorgia Meloni, who was absolutely,
during
I would
the
say,
campaigning, she was quite extreme.
very outspoken, yes. And now we see, and she's someone that at least the heads of state and government in the European Council, they know how to reach her, they talk to her, they have, she actually tries to be active in a migration deal. So we see this, I would say, socializing, as we call it in the literature, reaction. But still, I mean, it's for those who see the Netherlands as a pro-European country, something will have changed.
Absolutely, and of course you also see changes. Poland, for example, now with Donald Tusk, again, a pro-European stance. So it is a dynamic environment, but it's true that there is still a likelihood that if we look towards the EU elections, that there will be a growing trend towards Euroscepticism.
Yeah, absolutely. You were indeed referring to the European Parliament. Mostly people talk about the Council of Ministers where the governments are represented. But if we look at the European Parliament, which is a co-legislator on so many dossiers, we also see this effect that they will go to the polls. We will go to the polls in May and June next year to vote for a new European Parliament. We will, in the Netherlands, elect 31 representative of the people, probably also from the Geert Wilders party. And then they will also have to participate in this coalition game within the European Parliament, which is difficult to foresee.
No, absolutely. And what impact do you think we can expect not only on the Dutch but also on the broader European politics?
Well, I think that we see this trend to the right wing. We see this trend towards extremism, and which is very, I would say, in that sense, very concerning because we see so many challenges coming towards the European Union in the current state that global politics is in. We see next year elections on the American continent, in the United States of America. We see China, which is seen as a threat in many respects, both economically, globally, in terms of cyber security, etc. So many people are calling for a strong European Union, and in the meantime, we see these electorates being, I would say, being gripped with a lot of fear about what European Union politics in reality means for their daily lives. And this is something that is a controversy, which is very difficult to bridge.
Yeah, I agree. And last question in this theme is whether you see specifically for the Netherlands that the Netherlands may lose influence in the international scene with a more right-wing government led by, for example, Geert Wilders.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be logical to say, yes, we will lose influence. But I must say that we have so many...
So the low and the high politics you made reference to.
We have so many experienced diplomats. We have embassies. We have officials. I mean, of course, they will be sent by a critical parliament. But still, the Netherlands know it's a bridge builder in the European Union. We can be a bridge builder on the right side of the spectrum, but our activity, I think, won't diminish.
Yeah, and I think what you said really clearly is that also becoming active on the European stage, there may be also a positive impact on indeed bridging, even for Prime Minister Geert Wilders, who sees that he needs to compromise from time to time. And that brings me to the third theme, which is about the Dutch elections in light of European legislation. So immediately after Geert Wilders won, he claimed that he may want to change some European legislation or significantly alter it or even get rid of it to have his agenda implemented. And it's very clear that in view of climate, he wants to see some change. That brings me to the point that what we feel at Pavilion, businesses need clarity. They need a stable political environment, but they also need to understand what are the next policies they have to adhere to. Where are the opportunities for them as well? If we look at the Fit for 55 package, the European Union has laid down very clear climate targets for 2030. And to what extent a potential right-wing government under the leadership of Geert Wilders will be an obstacle to the transposition and implementation of EU climate policy on national level?
I agree with you that indeed the main challenge at the moment is not so much, it's twofold. It is elaborating on the Green Deal and Fit for 55 package in terms of legislation at the EU level, and it's, as you rightly say, transposition, implementation, enforcement of the national rules that are derived from European Union laws and policies. And in the latter domain, I foresee problems there because we see the national parliament being very active in that process. I always say also to the businesses and the companies and the organizations I speak to as a professor of practice, that it's really important to follow the national parliament when it comes to European laws and policies. So not only go to Brussels.
Instead of the silos, just
looking at how the discussion is with the members of parliament, trying to also lobby them, because they, as you say, have a key role in implementing European Union policies once they are, I would say, once they hit the member states. So first you have the decision-making process, and well, you can say that the European Union is very, I would say, progressed in making the Green Deal into legislation. So it was first a plan from the European Commission. It has been negotiated. We see some trilogues going on now. So on the details of legislation, which are also very important to follow, by the way. And then you get the real decision making. Actually, this week on the issue of pesticides, we see that the European Parliament has not agreed to deal. So also still much is going on at the EU level with the Green Deal to follow for businesses and organizations, but the bulk of the work, as you say, in the next years will be on the national level. And there we see, of course, not only in the Netherlands, the opposition on how it hits businesses on the one hand, and on the other hand, the need for clarity. So many businesses say, many umbrella organizations say, maybe I don't even care what rule, but let it be the rule so I can adapt and I can invest and I can make long-term investment. And that holds for both farmers and for industry, and it holds for small and medium-sized businesses. And there, of course, this kind of landslide in the political landscape is not profitable because you see, in any case, it will affect the national parliamentary debates on European Union policy.
Yeah, so your conclusion is that don't work in silos, so understand the European perspective, but for the coming years, the implementation at national level of the European Green Deal is very prominent. So also in view of a right-wing coalition, you definitely advise companies to be active both in the EU and in the Netherlands to have their voices heard.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the coming weeks already, being in terms of national influence on European Union policy, we see that all standing committees in the Parliament, also the new members, will have to make priorities on the new Commission work program. We do it in the Netherlands every year. It's something that public affairs in companies is very active in, and we will, I would say that, and from my experience as a clerk in the National Parliament, I can also say from experience that national members of parliament are in need of information and background and expertise on certain topics. So, for instance, the European Commission will next year come with certain proposals. They have been announced. If you are acting upon that issue as an umbrella organization or an association in Brussels, and you have a Dutch, as you say, Dutch footing, or you're of interest in a Dutch situation, do not hesitate to inform the members of parliament about your position on certain European Union dossiers. They need that expertise.
Yeah.
It's their role now to give a political appraisal, but you can always help them with expertise and interest and send a lobby paper, etc. And that process will just continue. And I really invite all listeners to also look into that process and see if they can find a way of, getting their voice heard at the national level.
Mendeltje, thank you so much for joining me today. Very engaging discussion, and thank you for your insight. We don't have a crystal ball. We have to see how the coalition forming is playing out. But following your input, I think we can really rely also on the common sense in working together within the Netherlands with several parties, but as well in an international environment. And then you're very right, for organizations, they need to realize that it's not only the EU, it's not only national level, but it's really understanding the entire process. But it's for sure very important currently to look at the opportunities at Dutch level, because we just had the Dutch elections. Have your voice heard, make clear that you need stable policies and that you need to understand where your business is up for, what are the opportunities and challenges, and Fabian, for example, is also there to support you.